Hi, Dustin from Building Shooters. What we're going to do in this video is look at an overview of the NURO system and how you can start with one device and then scale up to meet whatever your needs are. For those unfamiliar with NURO, basically the really rough way to explain it is we strap 3 laser pointers onto a shot timer, put in a computer and a control system, and then give the ability to scale. So the purpose of this from a training standpoint is to bring the requirements for situational awareness, decision making, and agility, or the ability to change what you're doing as the shooter based on changes in the environment around you, into everyday training, whether we're doing dry fire, whether we're using sims or airsoft, or doing live fire. So that's basically what the tool does, and we'll get into a little bit more of the weeds of the technical side here. Just before we even get into turning it on, mounting the NUROs is something it's actually kind of an integral feature. So there's a standard 1/4 inch tripod mount on the back of every NURO, and that gives you a wide variety of mounting options, right? So for example, obviously it's a small handheld device, so you can hold it if you're working, for example, with an individual student, particularly at closer range. You can put them on tripods. Pros and cons to these: they can get in the way on the range, but certainly for a portable option, they can work. If you're on an indoor range, there are obviously a lot of smaller tripods that are available. I'm not going to recommend any specific one because it doesn't really matter, just based on individual needs and budget and things like that. The important point is just a standard 1/4 inch mounting system. And then one of the other things that is very, very useful is like a C-clamp mount like I have here. Fits very easily in a bag depending on what range that you're going to. It gives you a wide amount of flexibility, not just on a range, but also for inside shoot house environments and things like that. And there's really no limit to the amount of mounting options as long as you have the ability to connect to a 1/4 inch tripod mount. So that's the first thing. If we look at the capabilities of an individual NURO, it's important to point out that just getting a single NURO is giving you a standalone training system. You're going to get more benefit as you start adding other tools to it, but a single NURO just by itself is a standalone system that is fully functional and fully capable. Getting into some of the basics of the NURO system controls here. Over on the left side of the device, there's a push button. That's the on switch, right? It is a latch button. You don't need to press and hold, you press and latch. And that will send it through the power up process. You can see the screen starting to turn on here. There's a warning screen that you got to click through depending on what configuration that you're in, saying that you recognize firearms training is dangerous and you accept the liability for it. So you go through that, and now you will find yourself here on the main operations screen, and now you are ready to train. And again, single device, standalone training system, has its own onboard shot detection, etc. So let's just run through the options here real quick. One of them is manual. So that means that I'm going to control the device by using these laser buttons on the left side. So you can always turn the lasers on and off by just pressing these buttons. But if you're just using it like a laser pointer, much like a laser pointer, you're not going to get the shooting feedback, as in when did your shots happen in relation to when the visual stimulus appeared and disappeared. So what we have is the ability to send this into session where the NURO will start recording everything that is happening, both what it does and then what shots it's picking up in the environment, and then allow you to be able to see that on the screen. So to send the NURO into session, you're going to press this button with an I and an A on it, which stands for initiate and audio, because if the audio is enabled, that will typically give you an audio signal similar to a shot timer. So I pressed that, and now the device has gone into session, right? Meaning it started to record. I can turn those laser buttons on and off, record any shots. If I'm shooting, press the initiate button again. That will take the NURO out of session and then display the things that have happened on the screen, and you'll be able to see that and get your shooting feedback. So that's one mode. Manual mode, it's fairly straightforward. The next mode that's available is PAR. This allows you to run what we would consider to be a traditional part-time. The difference being is that what the NURO is giving you is a visual part-time. So for example, if you have it set for green laser 3 seconds, when you press the initiate button, that green laser will come on for exactly 3 seconds and then go off. Similar to how a lot of shot timers work, you can set a random or standardized delay for when the laser will come on, etc. This is kind of a legacy feature. I don't think there's a lot of use for it, because if you always know what's going to happen and when it's going to happen, you're removing a significant amount of the training benefit of using a NURO. But nonetheless, it's something that we built into it as sort of a legacy crossover feature. Your next option here is custom. And so what this allows you to do is access anything that you have created. Right, the NURO has a buzzer and 3 lasers, and you can build your own programs, group those into lists, and then basically make this or any collection of NUROs that you've connected together, which we'll get to in a minute. You can make it do whatever you want. So importantly, this all can be done directly on the NURO. So you can create your own programs on the NURO, you can save them on the NURO, you can group them into lists on the NURO, you can run them on this NURO, you can run them across a group of NUROs, and all of that can be done for free. There will never be a charge for it. That is an integral component to the capability here. If you're looking at this, you probably realize that it is not the best tool to do huge data sets with. So it's a little clunky, and that's by design, right? We wanted something that had tactile feedback, didn't have a smart screen, allowed you to use it when it's cold or when it's raining with gloves on, all the things that we have to do in real world range training environments. While that capability will always be built into the NURO, we are also very close to releasing the ability to do all these same functions, writing drills, being able to see what the drill will do, and then kind of manage this growing body of information as you start creating your own training stuff. And that will be available on the web. That will be something there'll be a charge associated with. But again, that is not something that is necessary in order to use the full capabilities of the tool. All right, so custom mode, Par Plus. There's some other videos out there about that, so I won't go into details. But this is a mode that has onboard shooter analytics. It's a very, very powerful training mode, a little bit less into the decision making and a lot more just into the pure shooting performance stuff. But very powerful mode, a lot you can do with it. I encourage you to check out some of those videos. And the next option that we have here is drill. Every NURO is currently coming with 275 preloaded drills that are broken down into 65 drill lists. And this allows you to effectively jump in and start training immediately with the NURO. And I'll just show you kind of how this process works. Not looking at the screen, but just so you can get an idea on how long it takes. So I'm coming down here and I'm selecting a drill list. It's going to be very simple. It's just going to be a red laser coming on. And in this case, the red laser would be telling me that I need to shoot. So I've selected that. I've told the NURO to load it up and program it. Oh, it's going through its programming process. I'll get some instructions on how to run the drill if I'm not aware of what I'm supposed to do. And now I'm back on the main operations screen, ready to go. And the only thing that has to happen from this point forward, I press that initiate button, it'll run a drill that's off the list. You see the red laser going on there. The red laser will go off, and then I'll get the ending sequence, which is a series of beeps. That is customizable. You can create your own initiation and ending sequences, which can be audio, obviously like this, or with the visual stuff. So without getting too far in the weeds, you can change that initiation and ending sequences. But the point is, I just ran a drill off that list. I would get my shooting feedback, look at it, process what I did, and when I'm ready to go again, press the initiate button and it will run the next drill. If you've seen any of the videos that go into some of the detail about running drills, you'll see that you do have the option to select how it's run. So you can run a list in order, you can have it run randomly, and a couple other options are available as well. Don't want to get into the weeds here. So that takes us through the basic set of things that we can do with an individual neuro. You can program it to do effectively whatever you want and use it to generate stimulus, create dynamic things in the environment around you where you have to see what's going on and use what you see to make a decision and drive your performance. There'll be some other videos coming out about how to apply visual stimulus for interleaving. We're using the same sensory and processing systems that we would use in the real world to drive what skills we perform and things like that. Okay, so that's a single neuro, just a quick overview of the basic capabilities. Now, hopefully you're on the same page with me that this is a really, really valuable thing, having to see what's going on around us, make decisions, change what we do based on things changing around us is kind of a core component of real world tactical operations. So it's something that we should be doing in training. Right, so single neuro, very useful for that, dealing with a single subject, but there are some limitations, obviously. So get all these on. There we go. So we've got 3 lasers, right? The 3 lasers are relatively close together, particularly at this kind of range because they are all, mounted on the same box. And so if I want to push my vision out and I want to have to pay attention to more than this small area where I know the stimuli are going to be, one of the ways to do that is start adding additional neuros. If I want to have multiple targets, I would need to deal with additional neuros, etc. So one of the things that we did when we built the neuro system is we put in a communication suite that allows you to basically build whatever it is you want, right? And a core component of being able to do that is that every neuro actually is a limited capability router. Okay, and what we're going to do in this video is walk through what you can do without any external networking equipment. Can we bring in external routers and do a lot more? Yes, but that's outside the scope of what we're looking at in this video. So just for a visual, right, obviously this is a wireless system, you can think of there being a Wi-Fi connection node on each corner of the neuro. So you can connect a wireless connectivity device, right, whether it be an iPad or a neuro, to each corner of the neuro. Again, that's a visual. It's a wireless system. And so that gives you the ability to do some limited scaling without needing to bring in external networking equipment. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. Now let's look at some of what we can do as we start adding other devices. Right. So if you started with a single neuro, and then you bought a second one, there is a process for connecting them together. You would first want to pick one that's going to be your control neuro. Either one of them are capable, it's the same tool. This is just a configuration thing. So pick one to be your control neuro, pick this one to be the subneuro, right, that is going to connect to this and be controlled by it. It's a little bit like hooking your television up or connecting to a Netflix account. Not a tremendously difficult thing. There's instructions on our support site and we're always available to help with it. Right, you basically authenticate these 2 devices together. Doesn't remove the ability to use this one as a control neuro to run it by itself, but it just tells these 2 neuros that they can talk to each other and what position they are in, respectively. So I've set that all up here. I've also added projection lenses. So just using the laser dots actually can be a very powerful training tool. But some of what our eyes and our brain need to do for real include things like object recognition, detection of motion, which we can actually simulate that, right, or get that neural circuitry working by making the lights modulate or blink at a rapid pace. And then things like partial object recognition circuitry, applying context, right? Like what does it mean if it's difficult for me to figure out what the shape is? What do I do with it? And you make your brain do extra processing, which is the whole point of neuro. Make the parts of the brain that have to work for real work for you in training. So what I've done here is I've added some shape projections just to be clear about what tools are out here. These are our 1 meter shape projections that are intended for mostly use in a shoot house, CQC sort of environment. We're just using them at this range and kind of a lane range configuration for purposes of the video. One other thing that I want to talk about with respect to the networking, and wireless communication stuff is the ISO tool. So in group training environments, one of the things that's always been very much of a challenge is getting individual shooter performance feedback, because we typically do that just based on hearing the shots. And if I've got 15 people online shooting, it's very difficult to know what you did because your shot timer is picking up everybody else's shots. So we address that with the NURO system with the use of ISO tools or shooter isolation tools. It's a wrist-worn sensor array. We'll pick up the individual shooter's shots and communicate that by Bluetooth to the control NURO of the lane. All right, so we'll talk a little bit more about these here in a second. But this is an option, gives you the ability for shooter performance feedback to be brought into group training environments. Okay, so I've got the NUROs set up here. And what we're going to see with this drill that I've set up is just as a single application or an example of what you can do now that I've got two NUROs. I'm going to see for this drill that I set up, the red laser is going to make the shape of a pistol, right, using the shape projection lens. And then on my second NURO, which is configured as a sub currently, I'm going to see one of two triangles or maybe both. And so the purpose of this drill is the shooter, I know I'm going to get a shoot stimulus and I want to be working on the mechanics of shooting. But while I'm doing that, I have to pay attention to whether or not that shoot stimulus is there. And at the end of the drill, I also have to report back what the other lasers did. So even though I know I'm going to shoot and I can kind of isolate and focus on the mechanics of shooting at whatever standard that you're asking for, right? Like it could be marksmanship drill, it could be a speed drill, right? I have to push that vision out and I have to push my awareness out and push that cognitive processing out and not only be aware of when the shoot stimulus is there or not, but also report back on something else that happened using some combination of object recognition and potentially motion detection if I'm making them blink. All right, so let's just give an example of what that would look like. Drill's going to start. So in this case, I would have had, I don't know what the exact exposure time, let's call it a 3 or 4 second exposure for shooting. And I also had a green triangle oriented in 2 different directions that I would need to report back on at the end of the shooting. So that's one example of how this can be used. But now that I've got a second NURO where I can start pushing that perception and pushing that awareness out, even as I maintain the requirement for that shooting performance. So another thing that we could do, and again, just a simple example here, is shift over into Par Plus. And so what I've got set up in the Par Plus controls right now is that I don't know which of these devices is going to give me a shoot stimulus, and I don't know which target I'm going to shoot at, and I don't know whether or not it will come back. So let's just see what happens. So I have shoot stimulus here, object recognition and motion detection circuitry being used. And now if I was shooting, I would get my shooter analytics and have the ability to kind of dig into that detailed shooter performance data if I wanted to. When I'm done getting my data, run it again. And now the other target's gone, right? So I know I'm going to be shooting. I have some parameters set up for my shooter performance, but I don't know which of the 2 targets I'm going to be shooting at. And if you've watched any of the information on Par Plus or the videos on that, there's a lot of different configurations that you can do. Won't get into the weeds on that here. But again, quick example on we start adding other NUROs. Now I've got the ability to do some other things and really push out that perception and make myself a lot more agile to what's going on in the environment. As we start adding NUROs to the system, we start adding capability. And I want to make clear here that the configuration of linking the NUROs together is not something you're typically going to have to do more than one time. If you're going to change how your range is laid out, you may have to do it again. But typically it's you do it one time and then you don't ever have to touch that part again as far as the device authentication. If you buy a pre-configured system from us, we set all that up for you, and it's something you never have to mess with. Just for an idea of what it might look like on the range to change configurations, these three NUROs are all currently set up as masters. So they are their own control device. Nothing is telling them what to do. So I would have three individual lanes here. Let's say I wanted to take these three individual lanes and change this to where I have one lane with one control device and two subs. I'm going to go through that process. I'm not going to explain it. I'm just going to do it quickly so you can see from a time management standpoint what that would look like. Okay, so I've just made all of the settings configurations necessary to change this from three individually operating lanes to one single lane. And I can look at the screen here. You can't see it in the video, but I can see that everything is linked up. Everything's connected on Wi-Fi. And I have changed this from 3 lanes to 1 lane with a control device and 2 subs. So just so you get an idea, you're not going through this lengthy connection process to change what you're doing in the field on the range. It's just something you have to do on initial setup. So what I've got set up here right now, just as an example, right, is we're going to pick a drill that is going to give me a shoot stimulus, right, which in this case is going to be that red gun. And then I'm going to have something that I need to pay attention to that will happen potentially on either side of the target. So I know I'm going to be shooting, but I need to push that visual awareness out even more. I can't just pay attention to what's happening on the right side. I need to watch the right side and the left side of the target while I'm applying my shooting skills. So I'm going to go ahead and load up that drill, and we'll just get a real quick sense what that looks like. What I've just done is change this to custom mode, right, which gives me the ability to pick a custom program. I only do this on the control NURO. I select what I want. It's now loading up and it is sending this program out to both of the sub devices, telling them what it is they need to do. They'll wait to get that data. When that's all ready, it's telling me subs sync successfully. And now I'm ready to go. The only thing I need to do to be able to run all the drills on this list over and over again, right, randomly or sequentially, however I selected, is just pressing this one button. So let's see what that looks like. So the NURO is going to finish its sequence. It'll go out and ask the 2 sub devices, what did you do? Right, we know what we wanted them to do, but if for whatever reason that didn't happen, that's important for us to know, right? We want to know what happened, not what we expected to happen. And then it'll put all your shot splits on there, and you'll be able to get an idea for what your performance was. But I also have to report back, right? What did I do over here, right? Like I know what I was shooting, right? And I can see what my shooting performance was supposed to be, but what was it that was supposed to happen over here, and I need to report that information back. See another one. So in this case, I have shoot stimulus, right? So I know that I was shooting, and we know that for this drill. We know we're going to be shooting, and we can define whatever our shooting expectations are, response time, shot splits, de-escalation time, or stop time, right? Whatever those, and our standards of accuracy, right? Whatever those are. But I also need to be able to tell you that I had first an upwards oriented triangle and then a triangle oriented to the right that showed up here, and I got to report that back after the session. And the point being, work on the shooting, but push out that visual awareness and the cognitive ability to pay attention to what's going on, remember it, and be able to report it back. Make more of the brain work, greater vision and greater awareness when we have a gun in our hand instead of less, which is what we have traditionally trained for. So again, quick example there, lots of things that we can do. Another thing that we can do using this on a single target is we can represent actual shoot stimulus that may move around, right? So for example, a gun goes from the waistline to one hand to the other hand, where we don't know exactly where the shoot stimulus is. So let's take a quick look at what one of those drills would look like. The only thing that I've done off camera here was change the projection lenses. I didn't do anything as far as the programming and the NUROs, so you can get a sense for what that reconfiguration or change process looks like. So I pointed this NURO down here. This one's pointed at the left side of the target. This one's pointed at the right side of the target. If you'd like to see what we're going to look at here live fire, there's a video there looking at, it's on our YouTube channel, looking at police shootings and agility and tactical vision. That's the same set of drills, which we're going to run right here. So I've changed what I have set up as far as where the projection lenses are. Instead of hands, we're going to be using triangles. The triangles pointed up are going to represent hands. Red being if somebody is injured, and triangle pointing up, green is someone just with their hands up, or a hand up more specifically. Gun pointed down is a gun in the waistband. Gun pointed horizontally is engaging the officer. And just a caveat, these drills are set up specifically for a law enforcement officer, may not be appropriate for a civilian based on the expectation of response to a gun in the waistline. But neither here nor there from a system function standpoint. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select that drill. So scroll past it there. So I found the list of drills in my drill list. I'm giving that a second to load up. So it'll load it up on the primary NURO, and then it will send that list out to the two subs so they know what to do. And then all I've got to do once that completes that one button push interface. Okay, it's sending it to the subs right now. It's been done successfully. You can press enter, enter again, and now I'm ready to go. So let's see what this would look like. Okay, so in this case, I went from gun in the waistline, I had a hand up, then I had a gun drawn, right, or a gun pointed at me over on this side, which then rapidly went to somebody who's wounded. Hope the expectation there is that we sent rounds. Let's try another one. Immediately with the shoot stimulus, changing to two hands up. So you get an idea of what that looks like, what I did with this configuration. I went from a drill where I'm working on shooting mechanics, where I have to have some additional awareness, to now a drill where I'm really pushing the awareness and agility aspect. Doesn't mean I get rid of the shooting mechanics, doesn't mean I get rid of the shooting performance, but I'm really pushing that awareness and working on the subject assessment component, where I have to keep an eye on every single part of where the body is, right, and where the hands could be to tell me what I got to do. So now let's look at another configuration, right? Same stuff, same tools, right? And now I'm going to shift over into our Par Plus configuration so that I can do a little bit more of a dynamic shooting, just working on the shooting skills and isolating and working on a specific skill. So let's take a look at what is involved in changing from the drill we've been doing, which is subject assessment, to Par Plus on 3 targets. So a couple button pushes there, and I just switched over into Par Plus mode. The other thing I'm going to have to do is change my Par Plus parameters, because we were set up for the drill prior where we were using the red laser with our gun, and now it's a green laser. And we also had 2 NUROs, and I need to change it to 3. So let me jump into the menu and make those changes real quick. Okay, so those configuration changes are made. And I'm lined up. So now we are configured and we're ready to run in Par Plus mode where I don't know which target I'm going to shoot at. And I'm going to get detailed shooter analytics. Shooting at the target on the right. May or may not come back, and I can get my shooter analytics. When I'm ready to go and I've evaluated my data, all I have to do is press this button. And when I'm ready to go again, press that button. So you can get a sense for how this works. It's pretty quick to change modalities, pretty quick to change the drill that you're running. The majority of the time is actually going to be reconfiguring your targets, less so pushing buttons on the NUROs. Now let's look at the maximum scalability that we can get without external routing equipment and without using an iPad. So what I've got here is I've got 5 NUROs. This one is my control device, and I have 4 NUROs that are configured as subs. Any of those NUROs that are currently sub-configured can be easily changed to master configuration and used to be a standalone training device. With their own synced up ISO or ISOs. You can have up to 4 ISOs linked to a single control NURO. But only a control NURO is going to talk to ISO. So for example, if this ISO was connected to sub number 4, that would be fine. If I put sub number 4 as a control NURO, it'll talk to the ISO, but as soon as I configure it as a sub, it is no longer going to talk to the ISO. Only the lane control NURO will do that. Okay, so I've got all these NUROs, everything's been pre-configured. I've gone out to the range, I've set up what I want here, right, or for dry fire, right? So I'm going to be working on a draw stroke or presentation or some skill. I'm going to want that to happen in 1.5 seconds, but I don't know whether or not I'm going to be shooting. If I get a gun, I'll be shooting. If I get the gun plus the triangle, I will not be shooting. You've probably seen this similar drill in a prior video. What's different here is that I now have other NUROs involved, right? And this is kind of the maximum scalability that you could do here, right? So these other targets may or may not be doing something. You can see I've also got a target over here. You won't be able to see that off camera, right? And then one back against the wall that you also won't be able to see. And so I've got all the NUROs configured right here so that you can see them, but it's wireless networking, right? So you could put them in another room, you could put them, behind furniture, you can integrate real terrain into these types of drills. And again, just a very simple example here. But one of the challenges we've always had in training, particularly as we start doing high repetition dry fire stuff, is we'll flip our head around to look at things, but we never actually have anything to see or respond to, and so we stop looking. It's a training scar that a lot of us have. And we've always been kind of in that, like, well, we're either not going to look around us at all because it looks stupid and we built a training scar, in which case we don't look around us at all and have no awareness potentially, or we look around us and don't see anything and build a training scar that way. So it's kind of been a situation where it's very difficult to train to actually have awareness of what's around us. One of the things that we built the system for, now you can potentially have something to see or not, right? Which actually makes you look. So anyway, that's the drill we're going to set up here. Everything is off. I want you to get a sense for what it looks like to turn that on, load it up, and start training. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on the control NURO. This is acting as the router for this system. If you remember from the beginning of this video, I have 4 connection points on this router. and I have 4 NUROs that are going to connect to those points. Uh, it is always a good idea to start the router first. That avoids some uh, wireless routing technical stuff that can go wrong. Get the router started first and you avoid that. Okay, so the router started. Now I'm going to turn on my sub devices. Everything has already been linked up, right? We did that, way before we went to the range or before we went to the training area. If you buy a pre-configured system from us, it comes that way. And so all I got to do is turn these on, right? They are already configured as subs because I knew I was going to do that, and it's a very simple process to change if they're not. And I'm just going to let everything link up. There we go. So you can't see it on the screen here, right? But this is telling me I've got 4 NUROs that are linked. I can verify I have good Wi-Fi signal on all of the subs, and I'm good to go. So now I'm going to select the set of drills that I want. Scroll past it there. The first step is to change it into drill mode so I can use one of the prefab drills. And so I've selected the drill list that is going to give me 1.5 second par time, and I don't know if I'm shooting or not. So it's loading up on this. Once it's completed there, it will send it out to all 4 of the connected subs. And then I'll be ready to train. One button push interface from that point forward. Sending it to the subs right now. You can see those screens popping back on. Probably on the video. There we go. All the subs are successfully synced. Go through my instructions and I'm ready to go. So see what this looks like. Drawing. I know I'm shooting. Oh, I've got some blinking hands over here, so that's somebody I've got to talk to. Oh, I got somebody behind me I also got to talk to that I can't point a gun at. There's a lot going on. Right? All of a sudden I'm in a very dynamic environment where I got stuff I got to pay attention to, or maybe not, all around me, right? And the way these drills are set up, it's randomized, so you don't know which of these are going to turn on or not. So anyway, very brief example there. There's obviously, hopefully that is shows you some of the capabilities of the system, why it's got the wireless networking in it, and what we can do as we start scaling out. So this is what it looks like, and this is kind of the maximum scalability that we can go to without using an iPad. So let's take a look at what it looks like when we bring in the iPad control. Let's take a look now at what it would look like to integrate an iPad into this system. So the iPad is going to connect to the NUROs wirelessly, and it's going to connect to them through a centralized routing point. The way that we have this system set up, because we're not using any external routing equipment, at least not for what we're doing in this video, is that if you remember, our control device is acting as the router, right? And so I've only got 4 connection points on this router, so when I bring in the iPad, that's going to have to be one of my connection points. So I'm going to lose the ability to use one of these subs. So I'll just take this out of the equation. Okay. So now I'm down to having 1 control device and 3 subs, or 4 individual control devices, all of which are running off the router, which is this, all of which can be controlled by the iPad. So let's take a look at what that process would look like, not from a how do I link and sync everything up, but from a what would I have to do in the field to make this happen. So if this was the existing system that we were using, which it is, right? I turned off the one that I can't use anymore because it would be eating up one of those connection points. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this control neuro, and I'm going to have to tell it that it needs to look for commands from an iPad, right, or from the iOS application. So I have just made that configuration change. So you can see it's not a lengthy or ridiculous process. And so this jumped over. It's now looking for commands from an iPad. So now I'm going to turn my iPad on. And you're going to want to make sure that it connects to the right Wi-Fi signal. A lot of times, usually the single greatest source of error is being connected to the internet instead of being connected to your neuros. So I've kind of got that configured here. It'll only automatically connect to the neuros. So I'm synced up. I'm on the network, and I need to make sure that I only am looking for one lane, right, or for one array, because I've only got one control device right now. And so I've told it to only look for array number 1, and I'm going to tell it that that array has 3 subdevices. And then wait for my lane status to connect. There we go. All right, so my lane status is good, and now I can initiate. And in this case, I could manually control what's going on any of these neuros. So that gives me the ability to do manual control. If you've seen some of the other videos, you know that we can also select and run drills. So for example, if I wanted to run that same drill list that I just, we were working on, where now I'm down to having only 4 neuros in the array instead of 5, but I can still select that same drill list and push it out. So that's getting pushed out right now and is in the process of loading. Successfully sent it to the control device. It successfully sent it to all the subs. And now I can run that same set of drills from the iPad, again, with the caveat that I am one neuro short in the array. So because I have 4 neuros, and I think I mentioned this earlier, we're not limited to having a single lane, and I'm not limited to having a single lane that I control from the iPad. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change all of these other neuros into being their own standalone lane that can be iPad controlled. So that's going to be a configuration change. There are some wireless settings that you need to do here. Changing the wireless settings is very similar to, it's almost exactly the same as connecting your phone um, to a wireless network, right? You just have to put in the SSID and password, basically. But once that is done, the configuration to change it kind of on the fly, on the range, is pretty straightforward. I'm going to go through and do that now so you can see what that process looks like in practice. So I've made those configuration changes on the Neuros. Now on the iPad, I have to tell it we no longer have any subdevices. And I'm going to tell it to look for those other Neuros. And now if you can see here, I've got connectivity with all of those lanes. It would be a good idea if we were on a live fire range here to be using ISOs so that everybody could get their shooting performance feedback. So if we were using those, now all of these, because they are configured as lane control devices being controlled by an iPad, or repeater, right, in the language inside the NURO UI, they're all going to look for their ISOs now, right? If we're in fact using them, they're not turned on right now. And now I've got 4 lanes, so I can sync all of these 4 lanes together, right? So every single one of them will get the same command at the same time. So that's one option that I can do. I can also control lanes individually. So just because I turn that lane on doesn't mean that these other lanes are necessarily going to be shooting. I can give them all their own individual stimuli if I want to manually. That's another option. And of course, I can select and run drills. And I know we've done some, or at least one other video where we went into some of the details there on how to run drills and how to individually send drills to lanes and stuff like that. So hopefully this has been a good look at what we can do with the NURO system from a scalability standpoint. To reiterate, a single NURO is a standalone training device. And then as you start adding to it, there becomes more and more things that you can do. You're not limited to a single application with it. So it becomes a very flexible, very powerful training tool to take what we normally do on the range, right, in terms of driving shooting performance, shooting accurately, shooting fast, right, having responsiveness, and being able to add situational awareness, agility, and decision making into our shooting processes. And whether we're doing that in a lane range configuration, whether we're doing it in a shoot house, whether we're doing it in a semi micro scenario type of environment, it's really kind of up to you as the instructor how you want to configure this. So this should have given you a good overview of what you can do just with the NUROs and an iPad. If you want to go beyond this and scale, bringing in external networking equipment adds a ton more possibilities. And I don't want to say it's limitless, but a virtually limitless variety of things that you can do in terms of configuration and application. So thanks for watching. Hope to see you in a seminar or on the range, and check out some of our other videos. And if you like what you see, consider getting a NURO.